I've got my Harry Potter exploding bonbons candle burning. I've got my Gryffindor tie on. I've got a large glass of brandy, which is what Dumbledore requests of Hagrid in this film.
I'm pretty sure there's a owl in my walls. So
Seriously?
No, I'm just kidding. But there's
That'd be pretty funny if there was.
There's a Hedwig. There's a little Hedwig like stuffy that's staring at me right now, and you could actually put a little magnet on it so it stays on your shoulder.
Oh,
yeah, they're pretty popular.
Yeah. It's quite charming. Well, this is Why Wasn't It Better, everyone? And I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
We have a return guest with us today, friend of the show and noted Harry Potter fan, Jake Valkusky. Welcome back.
Welcome back, Jake.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Another season finale for you. That's 2.
Nice.
It's a pretty esteemed honor.
It is. And
I don't think we've ever had a guest who's been on 2 season finales, Anton.
And for a big movies, right?
Big movies. All the Harry Potter movies are big movies. That's why we decided to do them as season finales, which is, it's going to take many seasons, but these are certainly worthy of finales.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not like last week's episode, The Two Jakes. Coincidentally enough, Jake, we just covered, or we haven't actually recorded the episode yet, but it's the sequel to Chinatown called The Two Jakes.
Oh, I feel like I've heard of that. I don't know if I've seen it, though.
You probably haven't. Nobody's seen it.
Yeah, it's a very, very obscure film.
And it shouldn't be, because Chinatown's one of the most famous movies of the 20th century, I would say, right?
Oh, 100%.
It's the same situation we ran into with when we covered Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny. Every listener was like, there's a sequel to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Or it's like finding out there's a sequel to The Shining called Dr. Sleep.
Did you hear about the that one Star Wars Christmas movie?
Holiday special?
Yeah.
Which isn't even it's like you can't even really call it a movie. It's just it was a TV thing, right? Yeah, it aired on TV.
Yeah, but I mean it's deemed as like the worst movie.
It's canon. It's on Disney Plus now.
They acknowledge it.
They have no choice.
Wild.
Like the hundreds of novels that just dissipated into non-canonical void.
You mean the novels that actually have like real stories that were probably worth filming?
Well, they were cool, especially going into like, did you ever play like the Jedi Academy games?
Not that one, but I played like Knights of the Old Republic. I mean, stuff like that. Pretty great.
The Jedi Academy games were really cool because it also continued in that continuity. So it featured some of those characters in the sequel novels. And it was really fun. So
yeah, they retconned all that, and they were like, "Can we interest you in some crap?"
Yeah, would you like Adam Driver?
Yeah, enough about Star Wars, though. Let's talk about, in my opinion, a far more fun franchise at this point.
Yep. Let's talk
about. We'll see what HBO does with the new series, which is going to debut in 2026. At some point.
I'm curious to see like if I didn't see who's directing it. I wonder if
you mean the showrunner, like who's
the showrunner.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's just you know what? Having rewatched Prisoner of Azkaban just the other day, like they better not screw this series up. That's all I have to say, because these films got so many little things right.
Sorry, this is so distracting. My jacket smells like garlic powder.
Would you like to remove it?
No, it's cold.
You don't have any other jackets you can wear? Just that one?
Let's just power through.
All right, fair enough.
Or a heater.
Put the heat on. I don't know. So our season 7 finale is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Season 7 is pretty much done, Anton. We're going to record our recap episode. I think we have 2 more episodes to record, because we don't record these things in order. But for all intents and purposes, season 7 is in the wraps.
Yeah, have some fun with the behind the scenes, folks. It's all fun under the curtain.
Remember when we were naive and we thought we could record them in order? We're like, that makes perfect sense to record the episodes in order. And then we realized that's a stupid idea.
Yeah, no, it won't work. But it's been a very, very fun process because, of course, this timeline is also coinciding with, hey, we're 2 expecting dads. So
that's right. And by the time this episode airs, that will have already happened.
Yep, we're fully fledged in the diaper changing. So
yeah, we'll see. You're going to be a few weeks ahead of me, but who knows? As Jake has pointed out to me, there's no book you can read that gets it all right.
No.
But does this film get it all right? Let's try to figure it out as we go. So Harry Potter's third year at Hogwarts starts off badly when he learns deranged killer Sirius Black has escaped from Azkaban prison and is bent on murdering the teenage wizard. While Hermione's cat torments Ron's sickly rat, causing a rift among the trio, a swarm of nasty Dementors is sent to protect the school from Black. A mysterious new teacher helps Harry learn to defend himself, but what is his secret connection to Sirius Black? The tagline of this film is "Something wicked this way comes." That was all over the posters in the promotions for this film, and what a wonderful series of promotions that this was. It was released on June 4th, 2004 by Warner Brothers Pictures, Heyday Films, and 1492 Pictures. Directed by Alfonso Cuarón, screenplay by Steve Kloves, based on the novel by J.K. Rowling, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, Michael Gambon, Gary Oldman, Alan Rickman, David Thewlis, Maggie Smith, Emma Thompson, and Timothy Spall. The budget was $130 million. That is $217 million adjusted for inflation. And the box office was $808 million. That is $1.35 billion adjusted for inflation. Jake, this is an obvious question, of course, but why did you want to talk about Prisoner of Azkaban?
Oh, I mean, it's the next movie, as we just mentioned, this series of not only Harry Potter itself, but the movies that followed, and it's a good one. I mean, the book, obviously fantastic. Love the book. And the movie, even though it has some things here and there, it's great. And they're keeping up the pace and the whole allure of the first two, and this one definitely is keeping it going and doesn't hinder it in any way that I see. So I enjoy this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, the book, for many Potter fans, it will be cited as their favorite. This is often referred to as the best book. Of course, it's all subjective, but I would say more often than not, this is the book that fans will tell you is their favorite, right, Anton? Because I know it's yours.
It is mine. No spoilers there. It's just such a great introduction to the series in terms of, I think, the evolution, the maturity, the twists, the turns, and just the heart in this book. It just, for me, it's just, there's so much here that I love.
What sets it apart for you?
I think that part of it is between this versus the first two, we get a very real, grounded sense of not only these mature themes of like loss, family, but also then how do those feelings mature and how do those characters mature in a very real way. I think way more than the first two books and first two films.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I was actually reading little parts of the book to prepare for this episode because, of course, watching the movie, I had to scratch that itch.
Yep.
Because I haven't read these in a while.
First edition copy right there?
Of course, it's a first edition copy. Ooh, all my Harry Potter books are first edition.
Careful. You got to make sure that that's in encapsulated with a dust protection. Those things go for a pretty penny nowadays.
It's not encased in anything. It's in good condition, I would say, but I have no intention of ever selling them, so
that's the right.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's kept in pretty good condition on my bookshelf, but it's 100 pages plus longer than Chamber of Secrets. And Anton, I know what you mean. I love the first two books and I love the first two movies, but they are more or less, not to diminish them in any way, Harry and friends solving a mystery.
And this was Hermione solving mystery.
Yes, it was entirely. But to your point, this story, as you would want from a sequel, upped the stakes in a much more personal way. And I know what you mean about the heart. And I think the film did a very good job of capturing that, which we'll talk about. This is also many people's favorite film in the series. No coincidence. It has, I believe, the highest rated Rotten Tomatoes score. Not that that means everything, but 90% is stellar.
It's very strong.
Yeah. The first two films are in the 80s, so it wasn't like they were a slouch. Chris Columbus, who had directed the first two, he took a step back. He served as one of the producers here. This would be his final involvement in the series. Taking over for him was Alfonso Cuarón, which was a very very big deal at the time. He
Who
was
was that,
not
Pat?
known, Alfonso Cuarón.
Bartolo Colon?
The MLB legend, Bartolo Colon. What do you think? Hall of Fame? No, not quite.
Not for not. I mean, I don't know. Let's give it 5 years and see how people feel.
How long has he been retired? It's like a while, right?
It has been a while.
Yeah, he played for a long time too.
Yeah,
for almost every team.
20-year career?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jake, if you don't know who that is, look up Bartolo Colon.
He's one of those
massively entertaining baseball player.
And we mean massive. He's one of those like really famous like big guys that can pitch really well.
But like a real athlete.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't look like it, but a real athlete. Yeah, so Alfonso Cuarón, not known for blockbusters. You'd say he's an auteur, right, Anton?
Absolutely.
So he was unconventional choice for this, right?
Especially when, well, I don't know if it's unconventional more so than just very good care. And we've talked about this before, in that every decision made, whether it comes from the casting to usage of effects to even directorial choices, it shows a strong sense of understanding the maturity and growth that it took with the third book versus the first two films. Because very, very distinct directorial choice.
At the time, I remember thinking it was interesting because I knew who he was because of A Little Princess, which I suppose isn't too far away from the Wizarding World.
No, it's not. Very whimsical. Also, I think we talked about before, like that's a movie that was in my family's VHS library.
Indeed.
But especially when we get more films and when we think about more of Alfonso Cuarón's films, touches on very serious subjects with a lot of nuance.
He hadn't directed a lot before this.
No.
I don't want to say he was a young director at the time, but this was his fourth film, something like that.
Something like that. But he had one film that, of course, was one of his groundbreaking films that he's still very well known for, Y Tu Mamá También.
Yeah. Right. That was I think that came out in 01 or 02.
Yeah, but
I mean, well, if you want to call it a gamble for them to hire him, it was a gamble that paid off. This was a massive success. Like, it made slightly less money than the second one, but 800 million is an enormous amount of money. This came out a year and a half after the second one. So they, we talked about that on the Chamber of Secrets episodes. They realized that it was going to be tough to make these things every year. So they switched the production to 18 months. But speaking of the production, unless either of you have anything to add in our intro, we can get into the production history. Yeah. So Chris Columbus, I mentioned, he declined to return for this. He wanted to spend more time with his family. Guillermo del Toro was approached to direct, but he revealed that he had disliked the first two films, describing them as quite too bright and happy and full of light, end quote. He envisioned the third film as more Dickensian. So the producers quickly moved on. Sounds like they didn't like what he... I think he could have done a decent job with the Harry Potter film, but I can understand why he turned them off.
I mean, it's ironic, though, because from this point on, they do get significantly darker, right?
Literally darker.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of funny that he turned it down because of that, but that's sort of the theme and how it, you feel with the books too, because obviously the first and the second, they are more, kid-friendly, whimsical. This is the Wizarding World. Like, the problems aren't too big yet, but now things are starting to pile up and unfold, and so it does get darker. And I think that early opinion by Guillermo was a little too quick drawed.
Dumbledore thought so too, because remember in Chamber of Secrets, he's pretty nonchalant about the whole Basilisk Chamber of Secrets thing. He's like, Harry can figure it out. Or Hermione, whoever. Here's the real kicker. M. Night Shyamalan was considered, but turned it down because he was working on The Village. Thank goodness.
Yeah, that what is it? Did maybe someone use the time turner and go back? Prevent M. Night Shyamalan from entering into this verse?
I mean, I have a new respect for The Village then.
Did you hear our Village episode?
I did.
We gave it both barrels, let's just put it that way. It's one of my all-time least favorite movies.
Understandable.
In July of 2002, months before the release of the second film, Warner Brothers compiled a short list of potential replacements, which consisted of Callie Corey, Kenneth Branagh, that would have been interesting, who of course played Lockhart in Chamber of Secrets, and the eventual selection Alfonso Cuarón. He was initially reluctant as he had not read any of the books or seen the films, but it was Guillermo del Toro who convinced him to do it. He berated him for his arrogance and told him to read the books, which he did, and he quickly accepted the offer. His appointment pleased J.K. Rowling, who had loved his film, Y tu mamá también, and was impressed with his adaptation of A Little Princess. Producer David Heyman described the hire by saying, quote, tonally and stylistically, Cuarón was the perfect fit, end quote. And as his first act, he assigned Radcliffe, Grint, and Watson to write autobiographical essays about their character written in the first person, spanning birth to the discovery of the magical world and including the character's emotional experience. Cuarón recalls, quote, Emma's essay was 10 pages long. Daniel's was exactly 2. Rupert didn't deliver the essay. When I questioned why he didn't do it, he said, I'm Ron. Ron wouldn't do it. So I said, okay, you do understand your character. That was the most important piece of acting work that we did on Prisoner of Azkaban, because it was very clear that everything they put in those essays was going to be the pillars they were going to hold on to for the rest of the process, end quote.
I agree.
I respect the craft.
Yep.
What do you think he would have done if none of them had done it?
What is that, 500 points from Gryffindor?
Yeah, something like that. Cuarón wanted to establish a more mature tone in the characters' costumes and the sets. He explained, quote, what I really wanted to do was make Hogwarts more contemporary and a little more naturalistic, end quote. He asked all the kids in the film to wear their uniforms as they would if their parents weren't around. In this film, the characters often wear modern street clothes. Rowling was consulted for this change, which she approved.
I don't think it was ever set like, obviously they do wear their robes and their uniforms, but I don't know if it was ever explained on what the actual requirements were. So, you'd expect when they're not in class at the end of the day that they would be in more, regular everyday clothes.
Right. Yeah, it was a change I had no issue with. Apparently some fans didn't like that change. I think that's pretty nitpicky.
Yeah, I agree.
Cuarón's main concern was for Hogwarts to have a larger scope and be grounded in the real world. New sets constructed for the film included the Hogsmeade Village and the Three Broomsticks public house. The use of real-life locations significantly changed the look of Hagrid's hut. The Shrieking Shack set was built on a large hydraulic platform with the help of the special effects department, quote, creaking and moving as if being continually buffeted by the wind, in order to appear almost alive. Principal photography began in February 2003 at Leavesden Film Studios and ended in November. On-location shooting, which was much more extensive than the first 2 films, included Glencoe and Sirius Loxton, Scotland, North London's Palmer's Green for the night bus scene, and the Virginia Water Lake in Surrey for Harry's ride on Buckbeak, among others. Industrial Light and Magic and Framestore handled the key visual effects shots, while the moving picture company, Cinestite and Double Negative crafted additional material. Cuarón retained John Williams, for whom it would be the third and final movie he scored in the series. The soundtrack was a significant departure from the previous 2, as Cuarón wanted the score to take a different approach. When filming concluded, Cuarón found that it had, quote, been the 2 sweetest years of my life, end quote, and he expressed his interest in directing one of the sequels. So quite a production history and very distinctly a different direction for the series.
Yeah, a lot of things not only changed, but are changing at the same time, regarding especially John Williams and, obviously him as the new director coming on board, but definitely making it and keeping it very theatrical.
Well, why don't we go ahead and jump right into the reasons of why wasn't it better? Or let's just go to these reasons.
Number 1, the plot. And I want to get this one out of the way first. I think this is a great film. I don't know how great of an adaptation it is of the novel. And these 2 things do not need to be mutually exclusive. I don't think you need to completely faithfully adapt the source material to make a great movie, and vice versa. And I don't want to single this film out because I think all of the Harry Potter film adaptations, there are some holes in the stories, there are some inconsistencies, there are some contradictory things. So what I'm about to say, I think very highly of this film. I just want to preface this, especially for you, Anton, because I know this is near and dear to your heart, as it is mine.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point that you put about there's the distinction between an adaptation that either or that takes exactly what's from the source material or something that takes creative liberties. Something that we can already just say is very distinct, and funny enough, because it's a pretty important theme, is time. Would you agree that the use of time or how much time has progressed is very different in the book versus the film?
Yes, definitely would agree with that. The criticism you hear about not just some of the Harry Potter films, but any film, right, that adapts a very famous source material like a book is what I don't like hearing, which I think is a lazy criticism, is to say like, oh, I didn't like it because it wasn't like the book. It's like, well, that doesn't mean it's a good or a bad movie. You know, I can understand if there are things you love in the book that you don't see translated on screen, you're going to feel like you're not getting to see something you loved, and that may rub you the wrong way. And that's understandable. We are all guilty of that in some degree. I criticize all plot holes equally, Anton, as you know, regardless of the film. And the reason I wanted to talk about the plot in this film is what I think is slightly unique for this film in the series is there are plot holes in this film's plot that are not in the novel's plot. And I find that interesting. You know, we talked about the plot holes in Chamber of Secrets. There's some stuff, you know, like how did Dobby know about the Chamber of Secrets? Not really answerable. How did Tom Riddle really frame Hagrid? It's like not really answerable. Like, why did nobody ask Moaning Myrtle what happened to her? It's like, In this film, the only issue I really have with this film is the writing in parts, because this film in particular and future films in this series will rely heavily on assuming that the viewer has read the book, much more so than the first two films. I don't think you need to have read the first two books to really get everything that happens in the first two films.
I agree.
Now, if you're unfamiliar with the source material of Prisoner of Azkaban, there are things in this film that are puzzling and that do not get explained. There's a couple things I'll go through, and then I'd like to hear from both of you on this. So I'm just going to rattle through this. In the scene on the bridge, Lupin is talking to Harry about his mother, Lily, about how they were close. He also mentions Harry's father and what we later find out to be the Marauders, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's assumed based on that conversation that Lupin was much closer to Harry's mother than his father, which is not the case. There is no explanation of how Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban, which is, I don't know, fairly important. I was watching this the other night with people who had never read the book, and they asked this question: how did he get out of prison? I'm like, well, the film doesn't explain that.
Yeah.
Most importantly for me, there is no explanation given to the Marauders or the Marauders map, who they are, the fact that Harry's father was one of them, the fact that Lupin was one of them, Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew were the other two. I found this particularly egregious. The film makes no attempt to explain how Lupin knows how the map works. Harry never asks him how he knows it works. The map is supposed to be a secret, really only known to those who, you know, possess it and operate it. And the Shrieking Shack, really no explanation of that. I don't know if that's necessarily a hole. You don't need that for the film's plot to work, but it is pretty interesting how in the book, the Shrieking Shack was created specifically for Lupin to handle his werewolf problem. It has no doors or windows, and you can only enter it from that hole in the ground that's under the Whomping Willow. I just went on there for a while, so I'll let the two of you take over.
I mean, what aspect do you think maybe is the best thing to, I guess, dissect here? Because I think it is very fair to say this looks like a very clear list of things that, from a directorial standpoint, if I wanted to cut for time or if I wanted the audience to connect the dots, I'd say maybe two aspects from that list are like pretty critical. Otherwise, certain things I could see ending up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, the Marauders piece for me is unforgivable.
Yeah, that needs way more context.
That, and I also think how Sirius escaped from Azkaban, because that kind of comes back throughout the theme, and especially at the end, because he obviously doesn't handle the Dementors well, right? So like Azkaban is surrounded by them, right? And so like, how did he escape if it wasn't properly dealing with the Dementors?
Yeah, and they created their own plot hole because several characters at several points in the film mentioned like no one's ever escaped from Azkaban before. It's like what is it like? It's like wizarding Alcatraz, right? They're like, well, it's impossible to break out of. Black's the only person that has done it, and they're like, and we're just not going to explain how that happened.
Yeah, there's another aspect that I always thought was really curious, but it's even just in the novel, you don't really understand Snape's relationship with Lupin, but they all went to school together, and Lupin bullied Snape. So I figured there would have been more of that animosity in the film or even in the novel.
Yeah, the film like hints at it. You know, when Snape
Right.
makes that comment to them, like, "Oh, look at you bickering like a married couple."
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
he also just pops up randomly. The novel answers why Snape followed Lupin there, right?
Right.
I guess the movie kind of does too, but he just kind of shows up at the Shrieking Shack.
Mhm.
You're like, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't really explain how Snape knew to get there. You're just kind of led under the impression, if you didn't read the book, you're led to believe that he was just out on the prowl, just as Snape has been doing, throughout the halls and the grounds, being that, detector, looking for any student out of bed type thing. And you just happen to see somebody go in there or whatever,
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. I think I do think lack of context for Marauder's map unreasonable.
The other piece too. I wouldn't say I have a huge problem with this, but if you remember in the novel, Harry is much more skeptical of Sirius at first in the Shrieking Sack. He pretty much immediately believes him in the movie. It takes a little bit more convincing in the novel.
Yeah.
Now, again, I understand they made some of these decisions for time consideration, but I was curious because Chamber of Secrets, we talked about how long it is. It's a full 20 minutes longer than this. So it's like, I feel like they could have covered a lot of this stuff with just a couple lines of dialogue, and they didn't.
So, I mean, at least regarding Harry picking the side in the Shrieking Shack, that I can understand just because everything that he's been told up to this point about Sirius, it's kind of comes this conflict where I think he wants to hear each side out. Well, he wants to hear, Sirius's side out, right? Because he knows what everybody else is telling him about how dangerous he is. But now being eye to eye with him, I think he kind of wants to see where it goes, and he doesn't want that interrupted. So I can kind of see that, right? That is okay. But another point with the Marauders map is, how did the Weasley brothers know how to use the map if they just found it?
I don't know that even the novel explains how they figured out how to use it, because we know that it was in Filch's office and they took it from there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can maybe make the leap that for as much clowning around as Fred and George do, they are pretty brilliant wizards.
Yeah, but that's quite a specific phrase to say.
It is.
And to unreveal the map, it's a specific phrase to say.
Quick sidebar: is the Marauders map like one of the coolest things like in any movie ever or book?
Yes.
I should say. It's so cool.
Yes,
it is,
and
so fun.
One thing that, especially in the movies, if people are watching it, when it's red, it sounds like they're saying Mrs. in the beginning, but it's Mezzers, which is it means a small company, or like air quotes band of brothers type thing.
It's like an old school term, right?
Right. Yeah, and I feel like that gets missed a little bit just because of how it is pronounced, especially if you're just basing it off the movies.
Good call out.
Yeah.
I love how they animated the map. How it
Yes.
It's probably really simple CG that they were doing, but it's just I mean, it has the perfect tactile, inky quality to it. It's just really, really clever effects on it.
Yeah, give me that Google Maps. I want Marauder's map layer on my Google map.
Ooh, I like that. That's good.
It does create the plot hole of, does Harry just never use the Marauder's map in Goblet of Fire? Because he could have caught Barty Crouch Jr. pretty easily.
No, so, good call out.
I thought about that, and I have an idea. And it kind of creates more of a can of worms, right? So you obviously need a hair or something to make the Polyjuice potion, right? So you would think that it would be slightly DNA based, right? So and once you drink it, you turn into the exact look-like of that person. With that being said, wouldn't it also change? It seems like it changes the bone structure as well. So why do they retain their voices? Because their voice box and whole structure would be completely different, so their voice would sound different. And on top of that, if it is DNA based, that would explain why I wouldn't see Barty Crouch Jr. in there, because if it is DNA, then it would be the complete reflective DNA of.
So that's a good theory. So you're saying it's not like the masks in Mission Impossible.
Right. I think more of the plot hole of that is their voices not being the exact copy, because it seems like it'd be DNA based, especially if it changes the bone structure, which means that their voice box would be close.
Wait, maybe I'm overthinking this. I don't know why I'm stupid. I didn't think of this earlier. Did it say Barty Crouch Jr. or Senior? Maybe he just thought it was.
Oh, good call.
It was just one Barty Crouch.
Like they didn't expand the character limit when they were making the Marauders map.
Right. And then if you think about it, Mad Eye Moody would have always been in Hogwarts because he was in the trunk.
Oh,
that's a good.
I think. Did we just?
But was that trunk supposed to be completely like unrevealing?
Maybe.
So whoever was in there
knocked out in that trunk,
right?
Like the Gimp in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I feel like
there's a thought.
And nobody was supposed to know. I think it's like kind of like blocking.
We'll talk about that in the Goblet of Fire episode.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too sidebarred here. Yeah, so Anton, you're with me on the Marauders subplot. It's kind of egregious not to elaborate on that.
What's tough with it is not only just from a technical aspect of why introduce something so cool but with such a lack of context, but I feel like that added emotional element is just so important to the story that's already very emotional.
And with that, it's not a great explanation of who Peter Pettigrew is. The fact that he was the one that ended up betraying Harry's parents, I don't think that's stated in the film. It's implied, but there's also no mention of what's the charm called? It's like the Secret Keeper charm. The Fidelius charm or something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Fidelio charm?
Fidelis.
Eyes wide shut. Hopefully not that one.
Ugh.
Is there a Harry Potter Eyes Wide Shut crossover universe somewhere, Anton? I feel like there might be.
I'm sure someone's written about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Pettigrew, he's an immensely important character in the series. He has like 5 lines.
Yeah, and his introduction too is just so there should be more, but at the same time it is like a crazy reveal. And I feel like maybe when thinking about it with the context of we're gonna open the floodgates to emotion in the series, but let's not do too much. We also are trying to capture the attention spans of children.
Fair.
I mean, even at the very base level of not including the whole explanation and backstory of the Marauders, the fact that the main characters come in contact with 3 of them in this alone, like, come on, that seems major oversight. Like, hey, all of these people they say the name of them all the time when they read the map. Like, come on, like it's just, I feel like it was definitely that alone is a major oversight.
You'd think Lupin would have told Harry at some point, like, by the way, like your father is one of the individuals that created this map. No, right. Harry's Patronus turning into a stag, not explained or elaborated on at all.
Nope.
That's a huge emotional part of the book too.
Yeah. But I do think that it's one of those missed opportunities that you can get with like an expanded edition.
Yeah, is there an expanded edition of this film?
I've never looked into it.
I know there's deleted scenes, but that doesn't count really. No, I mean, it doesn't really count. I don't want to spend too much time on the Marauders map because I sound like a broken record at this point, but they use the aliases in later films like Wormtail and Padfoot with no context.
No.
Yeah.
Which this film, they had an opportunity to set it up and they didn't.
So again, if they're just going completely based off the movie, assuming that nobody's, a portion of people haven't read the books and just going based off the movies, they're going to be like, wait, who are you referring to?
This isn't necessarily a plot hole, but Snape gets knocked out by Expelliarmus, just blasts him into the bed and he gets knocked out. It's like, that's
not even stupefy.
They stupefy him in the book.
Yep.
Which that would have made sense. It's an inconsistency, I guess. It's like saying the wrong Pokemon in Pokemon the first movie.
Yeah.
Or it's like using a form of distance to represent speed.
Yes. Now, again, none of these plot holes are in the book. But here's I wouldn't call this a plot hole, but Scabbers just happening to belong to the Weasley family is one of the biggest plot contrivances ever. Just happens to be Harry's best friend.
I think it's one of those if I'm gonna draw or just have enough disbelief to spend my my belief enough in that it's a small universe, and
that makes it even dumber.
But it's one of the more. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, like they're even though they're the Weasleys, they're not the Malfoys. I think they're probably one of the more well-known families in the wizarding world, right?
Maybe.
Also, just very involved with original Order of the Phoenix.
Maybe that's why he did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Maybe he was smart. I don't think personally, if I was Pettigrew, I'd want to hang out with a family who like knows who he is. If he accidentally turns back into a human,
bro probably had to do the most disgusting things as a rat, like just given garbage to eat, and he's just like, well, I guess I have to eat this now.
I mean, I think it's fitting though, because of how the Weasleys are portrayed as being not fancy. I guess the writing was okay. It's a rat. Would make sense for them as being unclean and lower class, and especially because there's so many of them, right? I mean, it's ironic too that it was Percy's rat before Ron's.
There's a lot of memes you can look up about this too. We don't have to get into that, but it's pretty funny stuff.
Everything about Peter Pettigrew as a rat is just so hilarious.
It could be a whole book. There's a spin-off series.
Yeah,
Wormtail.
A Day in the Life of Wormtail.
he's back into his human form. He's just like, I'm so done with that life.
Did you just crack up at like how much he looks like a rat, which is completely unnecessary?
It's funny because it's different from how he's described in the book, right? And like he almost looks like a ratly, portly leprechaun.
Yeah. That's exactly correct. Yes.
Yeah.
It's completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
But it sticks with you. It's haunting.
He makes an impact. My final point is, if you haven't read the book and you're going into this movie with no context, the final 30 minutes of this film, it's a head scratcher.
And admittedly, I know that even reading the book in preparation for the film, there's still so much more context that even I know, having read the future books, that once you see the film, you can just connect the dots way easier.
It's time to talk about the Time Turner, because this both raises a lot of questions, but it's handled brilliantly. The biggest question that you'll often hear about this is, okay, well, if they can go back in time and fix things, then why did it never get brought up again in the series? Why didn't they just use the Time Turner to fix any one of the many obstacles or issues that they encounter? If anyone is curious, J.K. Rowling officially expanded on this subject years later in her official online blog called Pottermore. So this is canon.
Yeah, were you guys on Pottermore?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You, if I remember correctly, you get placed in a house when you enter Pottermore.
You do.
And then you can take that. Now, another really cool aspect, you can take that same house placement, and then I think there was another online WB experience where you could connect your Pottermore account and everything would transition. So you're like, oh, you're in Gryffindor? Well, you're in Gryffindor here too.
Yeah.
So.
I think it still exists. It just has another name. I think it's just like the Wizarding World website or something.
It's not Pottermore Plus or...
So here's what she had to say about this. And I actually really appreciate the fact that she did all these essentially what you'd call expanded universe stuff to just make it official instead of just leaving it up to a bunch of internet nerds. Quote, time travel is possible only in a limited sense, even in the magical world. While the subject is shrouded in great secrecy, investigations are ongoing in the Department of Mysteries. It appears that magic can only take you so far. Continued. The longest period that may be relived without the possibility of serious harm to the traveler or to time itself is around 5 hours. All attempts to travel back further than a few hours have resulted in catastrophic harm to the witch or wizard involved. It was not realized for many years why time travelers over great distances never survived their journeys, end quote. So they couldn't go back in time for more than a few hours. When Dumbledore tells her 3 turns should do it, I assume he's referring to hours, right? It seems like it's a couple hours they go back.
Makes more sense.
Yeah.
There's something else I found that further expands on this. Now, this is not written by Rowling, but it's a Reddit post by Superstellar, which I think you found this too, Anton.
Breaking down time.
We don't usually go into this level of detail.
Well,
on our discussions, but
I always like to think of it in terms of how does one interpret the Android saga and what the future Trunks timeline is compared to the actual time travel that occurred. So
Glad you brought that up.
I'll leave it there.
The reason why I wanted to cover this is because I've heard a lot of people make fun of the time turner in this film and the book. And the point that I'm wanting to bring up and why I think it's important to mention it is it actually does make sense. It's not a plot hole. There are 3 theories of time travel: dynamic, fixed, and multiverse. So in a dynamic timeline, you can go back and change things. However, you can go back and cause changes that would stop you from existing, and then it would create a paradox. This is Back to the Future. That is a dynamic timeline. I don't want to get into it any more than that because it could quickly get confusing. Multiverse is something like Avengers Endgame, right?
Right. Where essentially there's no going back in time, but there's going to different instances of time to create branches of time. So with this theory, if Hermione went back in time, then in that existing timeline, she's never coming back.
Right. Now, in a fixed timeline, if you go back in time, the fact that you went back in time has always been a part of that timeline. You can't make changes other than the ones you were already going to make. This is also known as the bootstrap paradox. That is how time turners work. That is what this film is operating on, or I should say the book, going off the source material. This is a fixed timeline. So, for example, earlier in the film, when Hermione realized she had missed Charms class, it was because she had forgotten to go back in time. She wasn't able to go back and change what had already happened because it was already too late.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. And of all the characters to be given the time turner to, I'm so glad it was written to be Hermione.
And remember, from the book, she had to get all these special exceptions from the Ministry of Magic. She had to get McGonagall to vouch for her and all that. She had to go through all this red tape to get it.
Even as a kid, I remember thinking like, I want to be a fly in the wall as McGonagall just goes to bat for her. Just look, Hermione is a huge nerd. And she needs to attend all these classes because she is the biggest nerd.
She only has 2 friends.
Look, she's not going to do anything other than go to class.
Yeah, definitely a safe choice.
The safest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we may have lost some people talking about time travel. It makes sense to me. The fixed timeline thing, I think it was very intelligently written. The film handles it brilliantly. This is one of the best examples for me of why not just this film, but any film, to truly appreciate it, you need to see it more than once. This is so satisfying to watch multiple times and watch this play out when you already know what to look for.
Yeah, I love to see all the scenes now where it feels like Hermione's coming out of nowhere, but once you have that understanding of the time turner and what she was actually doing, it just makes those scenes so much more fun.
They set it up perfectly. They really do.
I think at the same time, this is another instance of lack of backstory and explanation kind of plays into it, right? Because if you're just basing it off of the movies, okay, where did she get the time turner? Why is she allowed to have it? Because you lose that whole aspect of that. It was a whole ordeal in the book, that there's people that vouch for it, and you lose all of that. And I think that could cause some confusion that isn't.
Yeah, she does explain it, I think, one sentence to Harry, and I guess it's enough that they get away with that part of it. I think, what does she say? Like, she says something about McGonagall had to get it for me from the Ministry of Magic or something. So you're like, okay.
It's enough of a throwaway that, again, you can just say, okay, sure. Like, it's another, I see it as another instance of here's another magical artifact that can assist in the journey. And what's nice, though, is that there's still care and that really puts together just why it's believable as you just also walk through, Pat.
For the same reason, this is why Dumbledore was able to know and make plans to help Sirius escape. Because as he tells Harry in chapter 37 of Order of the Phoenix, he was watching the whole thing and he would have seen 2 Harrys and Hermione's moving through the grounds, and he was able to realize what had happened. So it wasn't like Dumbledore just thought of the idea, you should use your time turner. He saw all this play out. So if anyone is wondering why didn't they use a time turner in the rest of the books to solve fill in the blank, they couldn't because it wasn't possible. All of the time turners in the Ministry of Magic supply are destroyed during the events of Order of the Phoenix, during what is the battle in the Department of Mysteries.
What is it? Do you think that was the first thing Dolores Umbridge would have ordered? Go in there, destroy all the time turners?
Does she? I don't think she destroys them, does she? Don't they
No,
accidentally get destroyed?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
I think. Because remember, don't they? We're getting ahead of ourselves with the movies. Don't they end up like breaking all the prophecies and stuff? Like everything's like exploding.
That's later.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. But anyway, the time turner sequence, it's one of my favorite parts of this film. I love it. It's well paced too.
It's one of those instances where going into it, it's a very, like, I don't think anyone would have expected it, especially if they're unfamiliar with the book. It is such a big leap from the first two films in a very fun way.
I think the way that they acted out and portray it in the movie is actually done very well. Like, especially if you think about the whole scene at Hagrid's hut. I'm gonna use this term, but the choreography was just great in that, of how the movements were very like, okay, they move to this position and the other set of Harry and Hermione are at this position in perfect alignment to make this happen for this. And like, it is kind of interesting and nice to see it all play out. Like, oh wait, why aren't we leaving? Oh wait, I have to throw this rock. I remember looking at the rock on the table. Like, it's very cool to see that all play out in like perfect choreography and movement. It is a nice thing to watch.
Yeah. What is it? We already talked about the Avengers Endgame, but this was the instance of another time heist, right? And I feel like even just within that like you make a really good point, Jake. The choreography of it, the timing of it, it just makes the pacing so much more enjoyable, especially in a part of the film that it really could have felt slow if it wasn't done well and the stakes weren't built out well.
It makes it worth it in some of the decisions too, right? Because you do, in the first part, when they leave Hagrid's hut, you definitely feel that, oh man, like really, they're leaving Buckbeak. Why couldn't they do anything, right? But then now you see it on their second time around, and it's like, yes, you feel that triumph. It is a good feeling, because you feel that sadness of, I like Buckbeak. He's a good guy. He's a good character, right? And then all of a sudden, okay, they are saving him. This is nice, right? And like,
Yep.
Obviously, watch the movie after the book, that, but it is nice seeing how that plays out, and it is a cool thing to see.
Yeah, because you're like, wait a minute, he got the executioner killed him, and you're like, oh wait, you didn't know, you don't actually see him kill Buckbeak.
Yeah, I was actually trying to see if there was like any frame or pixel where you could see past that one like rock, and they don't show far enough over. I'm like,
brilliantly done. It's the direction from Cuarón. It really is
very well done,
because you're getting everything. You're getting what's essentially an action set piece, right? But it's, as Jake, you pointed out, it's wonderful character development when they have to figure out like, oh, we have to intervene here, but we can't intervene in this other place. When Harry's like, oh, I want to go in, like we can get Pettigrew right now, and she's like, no, you can't do that. What would you think if you saw yourself come in? I guess it's exposition, right, Anton? But it's brilliantly done exposition.
Yeah, it's exposition, and then also just character building.
Yeah,
I think like this is one of the most mature. This is such a step up in the maturity and evolution in the series because of moments like this. You see Hermione is a strategist. You see also then on the emotional side of it, like Harry has to confront his feelings and his experiences in a very mature way. So this is just a really great example of that with a time travel.
I would put the time turner chunk of this film like up against like anything, like in any movie. I think it's flawlessly executed.
I mean, it could have very easily went sideways. Like it could have completely destroyed this film. I think it holds a lot more weight than people realize. There's so much dependent on that working properly.
I remember when I went to see this in the theater, I remember being nervous for it. I was like, I hope they don't screw up the time turner thing. When you go into these movies for the first time, you have, especially if you love the books like we did, you have all these expectations. I hope they get this. Like, you always know that it's never going to go exactly as you envisioned it in your mind reading the books. You just hope that, like, I hope they at least get these specific things right. And the time turner one for me and the Dementors were the two things going into this film. I was like, I just hope they get these two things right.
Yeah, They got the creepiness of the Dementors right.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Another thing worth mentioning before we move on, the one thing they had to address in the plot, and they did, which I'm sure Rowling made clear to them, is Trelawney prophesying that Wormtail will return to his master and that the Dark Lord will be reborn once more.
It was for maybe fans that hadn't read the books past this, probably a very like what just happened moment, and in the best way possible.
But for us, it was fresh in our minds because, of course, Goblet of Fire had been published the year before this came out.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, and that's great character that kind of gets forgotten a lot of times. There's Trelawney, right? Like she has a lot of...
I mean, she's mostly useless, but
she has some very key things.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that prophecy, and then the whole 13 dining together. Her quote was, when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die. And this is the first book that it starts in. And it's true because in the scene where they're all dining for the holiday dinner, and Dumbledore stands up to greet Trelawney and she refuses, that's when she mentions this.
Right.
Well, there was already 13 at the table because Peter Pettigrew, or Scabbers, was there. And so when Dumbledore stands up, now he's marked for death, in which he dies very shortly. Not in this book, but soon.
Soon enough, yeah. That's a good call out.
Good call out.
And this is where it starts. And it has several other instances where that stands true. That dining of 13.
It's funny because she's definitely presented as just more of a very like whimsical out there character, but and I think this was really well done writing. Like the first class they have is about like reading the tea leaves.
Yeah.
And more so, I think people just understand that term as just speculation, but I think it's one of those areas where do not underestimate, I guess, what's presented to you in this very mystical world, because it is a hint for some, things more devious or things may not be as they seem. So I think that all was just really great writing.
It's not mentioned in the movies, and it didn't need to be, but one of my favorite details from the books is that the only reason Dumbledore keeps her around is he just doesn't want Voldemort to get his hands on her. Like he knows she pretty much sucks as a teacher. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he says something to Harry like occasionally she's right with her predictions, so I just keep her around.
Yep.
A Dumbledore. That old scalawag.
Dumbledore.
So nonchalant about a lot of stuff.
She does, run that hard patch, with a couple books coming up. And Dumbledore definitely sticks up for her, and you definitely feel that, and you talk about it when you get to that review, but it's
when Umbridge tries to kick her out.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this isn't happening.
You feel it on the heartstrings. You're like, man, why are you throwing her to the curtain? Umbridge is doing that because she seems useless, but there's definitely the family aspect and the respect aspect that Dumbledore does have for her. She is, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? I mean,
right. Note the date. All right, Anton, it's time to talk about Alfonso Cuarón.
Nice. 20-year career. Oh, wait, wrong guy again.
Yeah, wrong guy. Just a reminder to everyone, we could have gotten M. Night Shyamalan. This is one of the biggest bullet dodges in the history of 21st century cinema. Anton just shakes his head.
There's no way, I'm just so glad that didn't happen, but I love the behind the scenes of just how this guy works with the kids. He's really even though the film itself was not posed, it was not kind of written with the same frame of let's work with someone that knew how to make a kids movie. It was let's have someone that can still work with kids but maybe draw out the more mature themes while working with them.
Shyamalan, you mean? No, you're totally right about Cuarón. He was the biggest new thing about this movie, and he really delivered. None of the other directors who have worked on the series get talked about the way he does, do they?
No, and I think that's where it's a very distinct mark and just all of the positives. I think that it's really easy to look at the other films and maybe see like either flaws or even just what makes them distinct as like Harry Potter films. But this feels like a very complete individual film almost, even though of course it's still part of the series.
It does. I think more than some of the others, like the Time Turner sequence that I mentioned, like this has real like masterclass direction in a lot of it. Some of the future films, look, I'm quite fond of them, but some of the parts have a very like by the numbers workman-like approach to them,
especially the later ones, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to be too harsh on them because I do like them a lot,
right? But I think that this was what if the studio chooses like an auteur, someone with a very distinct vision on executing on nuanced themes, they clearly got someone with great vision, and the film benefited so much from it.
I love what he does with the cinematography here. It's very, very the cinematography here is more interesting than I think the first two.
It's amazing contrast, right?
Yeah.
I feel like they're working with a lot here, whether it's not just dark, and I feel like that's maybe what a few of the later films like suffered from was, sure, it was dark subject matter, but what did you say, Pat? Was it poop brown?
Yeah, and Half-Blood Prince, poop brown color palette.
But in this film, there's a lot of grays, or there's a lot of shots where you can get a sense of this foreboding.
Still plenty of color, though.
But still plenty of color, and I feel like that's contrast.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You mentioned the passage of time earlier. This film does a great job of that. You get a sense of the changing seasons, especially with the Whomping Willow when it's taking out those birds.
Poor birds. Those poor birds.
The camera lingering on the clock tower, going through it, coming out, stuff like that I really appreciate. And then you get very lighthearted themes like the Boggart lesson in Lupin's class. It turns it into this very whimsical. I mean, the score is like, it's like jazz almost, right?
Yeah, which is a really fun little aspect.
Yeah.
Is that record player? That's a Muggle artifact, isn't it?
I think it is.
Yeah. And then in that scene alone, the tone switches so drastically very quickly. Once it turns into the Dementor, the music transitions and like the whole feeling just turns, right? And then it gets relieved by Lupin with the full moon he makes go away, right? So like you feel that tension really quick and harsh, but then it's relieved. It definitely is a good job. That scene alone is pretty powerful. And I think that is what allowed for some of the lack of background and detail in some of the aspects that we discussed earlier. Is the cinematography was so strong and different and well done that it allowed for more of a theatrical cinematography, experience that you can be like, wow, this is great. You overlook that stuff because you're just purely entertained. You're not critically thinking. You're just taking it all in and enjoying it for what it is, right? And I think that plays into the higher score that was discussed earlier as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Chris Columbus, who did the first two films. I think he was the right director for those films. And as much as I like what Cuarón did with this film, I wouldn't want Cuarón to have made the first two films.
Right.
He was the perfect director for this one.
Right.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Because for that, I mean, for that reason, alone, you could say, because of how it needed to be done in terms of leaving out some of those, key aspects and background, he was able to make it more, draw you in and not realize that stuff was missing. You took it for what it was, and it was, a fantastic movie and entertaining. But I mean, not to take away from anything else. I think it was the right time, right person, right place.
Gets the vibes right, Anton.
Yeah.
The vibe of the Dementors. The first scene on the train, that had a lot riding on it for me.
It did, but also everything within that, the way that it's characterized, I couldn't help but just like laugh, thinking as they were sitting in that particular car, Lupin's there the whole time. But he's just sleeping in the corner, but also just almost like a jump scare. I'm here and I'm here to protect. But I also kind of think like, was he awake the whole time?
So air quotes on this. I don't know if it was mentioned in the book. I can't remember. and I can't remember all the details from how the scene was laid out, but was he... I don't think that he was ever actually sleeping, but do you think that he was hiding from the moon?
Oh, it's a
I
fun.
can't remember
No,
how
I
that
don't
was
think he would
played
have
out.
put himself on the train with the kids if that was a risk.
He had his coat sort of over his head.
I think he was asleep.
You think so?
Yeah.
Because the way the camera operated, it made it seem like it was like he wasn't.
It also just is curious, sit in the one for the three of them to have like. I'm just kind of thinking back to myself when I was that age. If I was with my friends, I would not have wanted to sit in the same train car as someone random.
No.
So
in the book, I think he's like a bum because they're like, man, his clothes look like crap.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was no other place for them to sit. But when the Dementor shows up, it's just perfect right out of the book. Cold, icy, foggy. They nail it.
Yeah, it is. What is it? Every good feeling that you've ever had just getting pulled out from you. Did they ever, I forget if they ever address this in the book, chocolate and its properties to help heal you after an experience with a Dementor?
They do.
Is there anything within like chocolate's properties, or is it just simply chocolate just helps you feel better?
It's both.
Okay.
Lupin makes a comment about it, and then when Harry goes to the hospital wing, and what's the Madame Pomfrey?
Yes.
She gives him chocolate too, and he's like, "Oh, I already got chocolate from Professor Lupin," and she's like, "Who does he think he is? Like, he's not the doctor." Blah blah blah. But yeah, no, it's both things.
That's just fun writing. It's like, yeah, chocolate does make things feel better.
Yeah, it's the details. All these movies get a lot of the details right. I know people have their complaints about them. I don't think they're masterpieces, but we said it the last time. The margin for error on this was so thin. They could have messed so many things up with these films, and they didn't.
Yeah, and it's getting harder and harder, right? Especially when you think of the previous film to this one. The kids have aged up so much. They had to make sure to, figure out for that. And if the production schedule is changing to an 18-month schedule, well, have to keep developing the films and shooting fast enough. Otherwise, the kids are going to be too old. So there's a lot that they're fighting against.
Now, one thing that just dawned on me in terms of the whole filming style, right? We mentioned how this one is filmed darker. It's the start of the whole, darker filming style that we end up seeing, and the color palette's obviously different. Now, do you think that it was taken into account purposefully based off the theme of this movie and the Dementors, the very obvious reduction in vibrant colors as the other ones based on the fact of the Dementors and that whole drawing the happiness out, all good is gone type thing?
Yes,
yeah, I kind of feel
Cuarón was very deliberate on Cuarón's part.
Yeah, I feel like it was directly tied with that whole aspect of the Dementors. That's kind of cool to think about, and as you watch it back and be like, huh, yeah, I think the color palette is based off of that Dementor's mindset.
Yeah, and he doesn't go overboard with it because, you take the scene where Harry rides Buckbeak. That has the same sense of wonder that you'd get in the first two. And speaking of Buckbeak, I hadn't seen this in a few years. I was just blown away by how well the CGI held up.
Yeah, we do know the powerhouses that were involved in this film, and they spared no expense.
You're right. Well, I mean, because look at like the cave troll from Sorcerer's Stone. It looks all right.
It looks all right, but
this,
I know what you mean.
This is like top level. This is top notch CGI in 2025.
This is like an experience that you would build a Harry Potter theme park ride over.
Yeah.
Which they did.
It's a phenomenally well done CGI creation.
And I think at the same time, what makes it that is that they don't overdo it. They don't try to add too much to Buckbeak that could become cheesy or look odd in higher resolution. I think the amount that they've done with them was the right amount.
You're right, because they do enough other things practically, which is, again, a credit to Cuarón. He understands the limits of CGI. Like, Aunt Marge inflating, that's done practically. Also drinking brandy when that happens. J.K. Rowling must be a big fan of brandy. You notice brandy pops up in almost all the books.
Or is it just also a British thing?
Probably both. Probably both. I'm a fan of Brandy as well, so I just felt the need to bring that up. All the praise you hear about Cuarón, I think, is deserved. It's the right balance between the light and the dark, the tone of it all. There's dark stuff in this film, of course. Like the concept of the Dementor's kiss is about as dark as it gets.
Yeah.
And then you have like the night bus, which is just fun.
Which is also driven by a Death Eater.
The conductor, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, future Death Eater.
Yeah.
Future member of Al Qaeda, Stan Shunpike. You can kind of see it now watching this film. You're like, he would be.
Yeah.
So funny.
Pretty dumb. What you down there for? Yeah, I know.
I'd
Why
love
the long
to.
faces.
Yeah.
I'd love to see if he is handing out pamphlets. Well, actually, Voldemort's really misunderstood by the by the mainstream wizarding media.
No, he did a lot of things right. Can we
That was a
take
good
a
scene,
moment? Can we take a moment to cherish John Williams? This was his third and final contribution. We mentioned this. Brings his A game.
So good.
Yeah, really does.
Chamber of Secrets score is, it's great. It's more or less the same as Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah, and this one, I can't say it enough. I mean, with such a change in the books and the tone and the importance of this film in this series, like, I think that everyone knew the assignment, especially John Williams.
I was trying to assess this. He would have been about 70 at the time of working on this movie. I'm not an expert on all of his work, but it's a pretty unique score even for him. He's doing a lot of different styles of music in here. Like we mentioned the jazz stuff in the Bogart scene, and there's a lot of like medieval sounding music, which Cuarón gave him direction on. I find it interesting because most directors who hire John Williams don't give him any direction at all. Like Spielberg never really tells him what he wants. He just trusts him to compose the right music, which of course he always does. But Cuarón gave him pretty specific instructions on what he wanted, which I think would have been fairly different for John Williams and didn't seem to bother him at all.
Yeah, definitely took chances that played out very well, and it fit.
I wrote down Renaissance music.
Okay.
That's what it sounded like in certain scenes. When Harry's on the bridge with Lupin. Also, wonderful use of Scotland as a location.
Yeah, very much.
Spectacular.
It's just breathtaking.
It really is. I don't mind the changes that Cuarón made to Hogwarts and the grounds. I mean, I know it's worth bringing up because I've read quite a bit about it online. It has rubbed a lot of Potter fans the wrong way. Where are you guys on this?
I didn't mind. I thought, especially from the previous movies, there wasn't a whole lot of the grounds that was displayed. So seeing these, changes in these areas, it didn't feel like anything was being overwritten rather than just expanded or new views, new areas being shown. I didn't feel like it was a whole redo.
Yeah, I'm for the most part unbothered by it, just because I think my interpretation is there's always either going to be a new element, especially if, as we continue watching the films, just new angles of how we see things, or just unexplored grounds, or just even the scale of it can be different depending on how things are shot. And that's just enough for me to just accept, like, yeah, things will look different.
Not a short movie, 142 minutes. I think it's really well paced. I don't feel that it drags at any point.
Yeah, especially for a film that tugs on the heartstrings. It doesn't feel like a slow melodrama.
Couple details I want to bring up, because this is all, I think, a credit to Cuarón's direction.
How do they ever get Aunt Marge down?
The Ministry takes care
BB
of
gun?
it.
Oh, okay.
Bow and arrow.
Yeah, they killed her. That's why you never see her again.
One thing, quick aside that I was thinking about, and it's a little bit out of order, but when they first get to Hogwarts, you don't see the Thestrals. And I was like, wait a minute. Harry definitely saw his mother die in front of him. So wouldn't he always be able to see the Thestrals? But I think the explanation there is that he was too innocent to fully grasp the concept of death. And that's why he doesn't see the Thestrals yet. It's not until later after he watches Sirius. Yeah, Cedric. Yeah, Cedric,
that's a good catch, Jake.
Very
this
good
is
catch.
why you're here.
I was like, why doesn't he already see them? Because he's already witnessed death. But yeah, I think he's too innocent.
Speaking of Cedric, not the same actor.
No.
Yeah.
No, you're right. This would be the first appearance of Cedric Diggory.
Mm-hmm.
During the Quidditch match.
Right. Because they're playing Hufflepuff?
Hufflepuff, and he's going for this for the snitch.
Right. Short Quidditch scene, but it's pretty awesome.
It's very intense.
Yes. Stuff I was just writing down while I was watching the film. You can hear a ticking clock the entire time. During the time turner sequence.
That's great.
Almost the entire time. It's subtly in the soundtrack. Pretty brilliant. Masterpiece of escalation during that, when every couple minutes that the tension builds, and when Lupin turns into the werewolf and the camera zooms in on his eye and you hear his heartbeat, it's just stuff like that.
Cool looking werewolf too.
Yeah, different.
Not too much. Yeah,
that's something else that could have been stupid looking.
Yeah, because they went all for it to show as much of the transition as possible. Where a lot of films and any horror movie, when there's like a transition like that, they'll show the beginning and then pretty much just the end. They ignore the whole middle part showing what it's looking like during that transition, because it's very hard to get the anatomy and everything proper while doing that. And I think they did a great job with that. It didn't look wonky at all.
No, it looked uncomfortable.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, he's doesn't seem like a pretty smart werewolf. He gets duped pretty easily.
No, I mean he hasn't. It hasn't shown that he's mastered his werewolf form.
No,
well, especially
is that another Dragon Ball Z reference there, Anton, or gorilla werewolf thing? Could be.
Could maybe.
Jake's a Dragon Ball Z fan. So.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't part of the lore is that werewolves only respond to other werewolves' calls?
Or anyone who sounds like a werewolf.
Exactly. So he got duped pretty good, because I mean, he doesn't really know what another one sounds like, right?
Although it does lead to, I think, the best line in the film, which is, I think Professor Lupin's having a really bad night. I wonder if that was ad-libbed, because it's great.
Seems like it almost is.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
Yeah.
We're just rattling through these notes. Quick questions. How many students do you think hung out in the Shrieking Shack to get high?
If they could get in, I mean.
You tell me nobody's busted a... Oh, I guess there are no windows, are there? They're all boarded up.
Yeah, there's no... Yeah.
All right, bad question. Here's the serious one. Did Hagrid deserve to be sacked? Were hippogriffs really the best thing to start with on the first day?
This was pre-2000s. I'm pretty sure that there is enough. If the parents signed the permission slip, I think this is before.
I don't even think there was a permission slip for this.
I think just even signing up to go to the school, that's a permission slip. It's like, hey, like they're gonna see a lot. I think he's fine. I think umbrella wise, it's like it's the 90s. He's fine.
I mean, I think that it was completely fine, especially the amount that happened. It wasn't even that drastic of an incident for Buckbeak to get that, for that severe of a punishment. And plus, I feel like his teaching would have been somewhere along like the sandwich route, right? So like you got to have something strong to support the beginning of the year. So, you had the hippogriff, right? We don't know what was at the end of the year, but I'm sure that it would have been something good. And then there might have been, like a double-decker piece of bread, in the middle, to tie everything so kids didn't get bored. I think starting out with a hippogriff was great because, who knows what it would have evolved into at the end. We know Hagrid has, quite an affinity for dragons, Could have been a dragon at the end, a horntail.
I think it's maybe the same concept even with just schooling in general. Like, should this have been like a student teaching opportunity? Should there have been a more tenured teacher to observe? It's like
Dumbledore isn't. Dumbledore was watching from his tower, just like chuckling.
He sees the Malfoy boy get just totally just get scratched up by Buckbeak. He's like, he'll be fine. Oh, he's killed me.
That's so funny. What a great. It's again that stuff like from the book too. Mm-hmm. Malfoy milking it.
Yeah.
Do you think Dumbledore gets high?
Oh yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Something about Dumbledore, he just seems like there's a lot going on. I know I can't get to all of it, so I'll just figure out what I can.
Well, he has that wise wizard Gandalf feel to him, right? And Gandalf always has a pipe in his mouth.
He does. He has a very laissez-faire attitude towards the teachers at Hogwarts. Like, he knows going into every year he's going to have to replace the defense against the dark arts teacher.
Yeah, every year.
That's why he didn't have any reservations about hiring a werewolf. He's like, it's only for a year. Like,
Right.
what could happen? That's
And
like
then
9 full moons I have to worry about. Like,
Yeah, and when it's not the school season, he's in the Bahamas. So
I think we can move on to the acting cast in general. Radcliffe went up a level here.
agreed.
I don't know if he quite sells the scene where he's talking about he killed my parents. I don't know if I get there 100% with him.
I think overall it's a really good performance.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't want to be harsh on him because every other scene I think he's spectacular. And this is, again, I don't want to make this a discussion about the upcoming series on HBO. It's like, but they better get this casting right because Daniel Radcliffe got a lot of things right about the character. And one of the most underrated important things I think he nailed was the sarcasm. Harry is a super sarcastic character, and Radcliffe is outstanding at that. And not every actor can do that, especially a child actor. And I'm just afraid they're going to mess this up, guys.
I mean, let's hope not.
I'm terrified.
Just take the Dumbledore approach. Just let it happen.
just don't care about a lot of stuff.
It'll be fine.
Just Chamber of Secrets has been open. Yeah. Like the beginning with the Dursleys and Aunt Marge. Like, he's perfect.
Yeah, he's just as angry as you would expect him to be, and more so even because it's a very personal moment. And I think it is excellent in setting up. These are the kind of things that Harry's going to have to face during the film, which is his emotions and how he feels about his experience with his parents, or just even how he feels about his parents. So very complex stuff for someone at Daniel Radcliffe's age to put on screen.
He's really good in the scene with Minister of Magic Corn Fudge.
Yeah, and he can deliver the punchline pretty well too, especially where they're talking about the cane at the Dursleys. Oh yeah, I get beat loads. That was great.
Yeah.
It was good.
Oh man, I'm glad they kept that in.
Yeah,
St. Brutus's. Yeah, we send them to St. Brutus's.
I heard they used the cane there.
Keep pouring.
Well, we can talk about that now. Is as usual with these films, they're not comedies, but there's some wonderful comedy sprinkled in this.
Yeah, they always do a good job of lightening the tension and giving that moment of reprieve and lightening the mood. I think they do it well. They don't overdo it. I think it's done an appropriate amount.
And it's a perfect carryover from the books, too. The books are hilarious.
Yeah. I appreciate the long game with Neville being the constant punching bag in the series, but to only be so important later. So this is just another instance of that. You just really laugh along, but then also laugh at Neville Longbottom.
And they always emphasize the fact that, he might be a punching bag to some, but he's still friends with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Hermione punching Malfoy is just top notch stuff.
That had to hurt.
It looked real. Did she really hit him?
I don't know if she actually hit him, but I feel like he definitely overreacted by flinching and whacked his head on the stone behind him. That part I feel like was real.
Malfoy, as usual, is funny because he's the funniest character in the books. It's not even close.
Yep,
he's really good. I love how much of a dick he is. Well, actually, who's funnier, him or Snape? Snape's pretty funny.
I think, pound for pound, Snape's one of the funniest character in the series.
And
Snape's drier.
Yeah, he is so much crueler in the books too.
Yeah. I think that level of dry humor, you have to give credit for it because that's not always easy.
No, it's Alan Rickman, man. He's just the perfect actor for it.
Yeah.
I forgot about maybe Harry's funniest line in the film. Yeah, Ron, you tell those spiders. Great stuff.
Which, funny enough, Rupert Grint actually has a huge arachnophobia.
Right. A lot of things I forgot about this film. How funny Dumbledore is.
Very funny.
Especially when you've seen it before and you've seen the time turner sequence and on the, when they're going back and Dumbledore's just casually distracting Corn Fudge and the Executioner. Hilarious.
Could have been a throwaway scene. Or, I mean, it's what, maybe you'd get like one take of that, and it's just so well done.
And later in the hospital when he's smacking Ron's injured leg, it's just inadvertently.
Yeah.
Good stuff there. All right, we haven't talked about Sirius Black yet, who, of course, cast a shadow over the whole film. I think they picked the perfect actor.
Yeah. Legendary Gary Oldman.
Yeah. Limited screen time and does the most with it.
Absolutely, yeah. You feel like he's a much larger part of the whole movie than actual screen time, which is saying a lot. It's cool.
Yeah, and I think this is just his character and just how he's written, for the amount of hurt that Harry feels for like not having his parents and knowing what they experienced. Having this tether to a family is so important for him, his character, and the story. And having someone like Gary Oldman completely sell like a very complex character in that sense, and not in a very short amount of time, is just so impressive.
He has to be equally threatening, but you have to trust him pretty quick, and Oldman does it.
Yeah, you could tell he's dangerous.
Yeah, and like he sells the crazy part of it well. I mean, Oldman's obviously, he has a lot of experience doing crazy characters. When he's like, I did my waiting.
Or what was it? All of it. Or in Leon.
Or his like freak out in Air Force One. Or The Fifth Element. So funny in The Fifth Element. I mean, he's awesome. He's obviously one of the best characters from the series. Going through the newcomers, I mean, shout out to Rupert Grint and Emma Watson. Obviously, their chemistry with Daniel Radcliffe is the cornerstone of the film. David Thewlis, I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
As Lupin.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, and looking at his filmography, he's been in just loads of films.
Yeah.
We're gonna see him again when we talk about Kingdom of Heaven, so that'll be cool. He's been a lot.
He's one of those guys.
Emma Thompson, another, just
hamming it up.
So good, like
so entertaining.
A very Shakespearean dramatic actor.
Yeah. This was probably like she showed up for like a day and just did all her lines and left.
And you could see her throw the scarf over her shoulder, then walk out after she does the scene.
Was she married to Kenneth Branagh at this time?
I forget when they split up.
They were married though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, not a coincidence. The other big newcomer, replacing the late Richard Harris, Michael Gambon as Dumbledore 2.0.
I know people are very critical.
I like him. I don't love him. But I will say the same thing about Richard Harris. And here's a good comp for you, Anton. Much like Blofeld in the Bond series, I don't know that we ever got the definitive Albus Dumbledore. I like Gambon.
Yeah, I think that we get more of I think it's later films that people really criticize Gambon.
He can be aloof.
Aloof, but then also I think the characterization of his interactions with Harry, whether it's like being a bit too rough or...
Yes.
And I think like that's where a lot of people say like, that's not my Dumbledore. Like he should be much more, almost too grandfatherly, I think, when they almost think of Dumbledore. But, I think he was perfectly fine in this film.
I wasn't upset with his performance at all. I like him.
Yeah.
Jake, where are you on Gambon?
I didn't mind him, especially in this. I think he does well, especially in terms of how he interacts with, especially Harry and all of them. Really, I think he does a good job. I think he does have those qualities, the grandfatherly qualities, and I think that he adjusts it properly for the book or which book accordingly. And I think in this, he gave the direction. He wasn't a huge part in the movie, but he gave the information and vibes in a nice way.
I wonder who's going to be the new Dumbledore. I heard the name Mark Rylance thrown around.
Channing Tatum.
Chris Rock.
Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle should be in it. No, I'm kidding. I hope they kind of stick with Rowling's mandate for all British actors.
I think that is a very wise decision.
Anything to add about the cast? Any other standouts for you?
I liked Hagrid's quip at the whole Time Turner Buckbeak scene after Dumbledore mentions about I'll have a cup of tea or a large glass of brandy, and he says there's no small glasses in this house. I thought that was a great quip. I was like, that's kind of cool. That made that whole conversation pretty good. I like that.
He's great.
Yeah.
Again, perfect casting. You know, there's no bad casting, and I think the entire series they got it all right.
Yeah, and it's just. Oh, you know what? Got to give a shouts out to the Toad. What is it? The Toad Choir.
Yes.
Got to give
some
proper
Shakespeare.
respect. They're that's a lot of foreshadowing, people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a quibble, but I know the one thing. It's like that was supposed to be the first day of school. It's like this is clearly Halloween. Like it's not the first day of school.
Yeah,
Was that Flitwick leading the choir?
that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think there is a name for them. I can't remember what that choir's name is, though.
They're in the books, I think, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to the actress who played Aunt Marge, same one who played Miss Trunchbull and Matilda.
Yeah.
Not a coincidence. That was clearly deliberate on their part.
Clearly someone that knows how to get under your skin. She did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
I love the practical effect of her blowing up. It's so good.
And William's score there is perfect.
We talked about the meaning of life. That practical effect blow up scene. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah. Better get a bucket.
And then, or kind of also I get reminded of Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes.
A lot of similarities.
Oh, I can't wait to cover that.
Yeah. I love that movie, but
who doesn't love Big Trouble in Little China? If you don't love Big Trouble in Little China, I don't know. Get your facts elsewhere. Also, Timothy Spall, who plays Pettigrew, another just very, very experienced character actor.
Yeah, we've talked about him before, of course, on The Last Samurai.
Yeah, the narrator of The Last Samurai. Been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, just everyone's favorite portly, rattly leprechaun.
He did it well.
The only thing I have left to add is I love to see Hogsmeade, and Cuarón got that right too, because that was a big addition from the first two novels. Right when you get to the third one, Hogsmeade, they introduced this other piece of it.
You know, Pat, the Harry Potter video game is still available if you want an open world experience.
If I only had the time,
it is quite the experience. Maybe this would be good. What do you call it? Maybe that would be fun. Patreon content. Let's play with some Harry Potter.
You're about to have a kid. I'm about to have a kid, and you're proposing we start streaming video game content in addition to the podcast.
It would be additional content. It'll also be baby content, because I'm sure I'll also have my daughter either in my arms or we're also just both like keeping eye as the babies are rocking and sleeping soundly, because they're going to be great, aren't they, at sleeping soundly?
Of course. We're counting on it. I don't have any other notes. We've gone through it all.
Yeah,
so I will
so good.
Say, Anton, you were correct. It is actually called the Frog Choir.
Nice.
That is the correct name.
All
and
right.
It was Flitwick, yes.
Flitwick. My man.
Yeah.
They cut him out of this film because he is technically in the part where Corn Fudge gives the exposition dump at the Three Broomsticks, if you remember, and he's in the book.
One more thing, we didn't really address this. The way that Harry is given the Thunderbolt, different.
Firebolt.
Different. Yeah, the Firebolt.
Yes, it's more mysterious and dramatic in the book.
No, is what it is. But do we have a preferred broom? Nimbus 2000 or the Firebolt?
I mean, the Firebolt's better.
It is.
It's kind of hard not to pick the Firebolt, right? Like,
yeah.
But first ever broom introduced, I think, and I think that's the one that you see on display a lot at like stores. Like, like Harry Potter's broom is the Nimbus 2000.
Yeah,
that's fair. I love how this film ends too on the freeze frame of him on the broom. That's a good segue to end the podcast then, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up then and give our ratings. Jake, as you're the guest, you can go first if you'd like.
Okay. I will say that I will give this an even A. It did a great job in being the film adaptation of The Prisoner of Azkaban, which was, definitely, I love the book. It's not my favorite, but I loved it. Great book. Definitely a great movie. They did leave, as we discussed, a lot out in terms of some key details that would have been nice to have, but it didn't take away because of the changes they made, especially in terms of the director. And I think it just worked. It worked. They took the chance. They made the right decision, and it worked for this film because the transition, the whole mood change, what they were going for in starting the maturity, it worked, and it made it very theatrical and entertaining, and it made it so you didn't miss and question too much as you were watching it. As you rewatch it and start going through, more critically, you can identify aspects that are missing. But overall, I think they did a great job. And for a movie, it was very entertaining, and it did just that. And so that's why I think that I would rate it an even A, as it did have its flaws, but it also made up for it in some great direction and some risks that were rewarded. Yeah.
Love it. Anton.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is just very strong vision. Having not Bartolo Colon, Alfonso Cuarón directing this is just so great in that there was no hesitation in having a very strong, distinct vision on how to execute on this story, on how to bring that to screen, on what to cut out, and on what to include. And whether it comes to going to a legendary composer like John Williams and asking of that same shared vision, or speaking to the core cast and asking of them to really align on who they are as characters and understanding themselves as characters, I think that care and attention and detail is very clear on this screen. And having such a strong vision is so important in what is really the turning point of the series, from a children's book into just a more fully fleshed out novel that I think everyone can relate to. Not to say that the first two aren't things that people can connect to and evoke emotion, but the third one just has those complex feelings, emotions, and character development that you really don't always expect from a children's novel, that at the same time, they probably couldn't go for the same strategy with the first two films and putting it into film. So I'm just so impressed by that. And I'm just so impressed by that dedication. A lesser studio and a lesser cast and crew would have been fine just going with the same formula. And they did not go for that. They were very direct. And I really appreciate that dedication. And it's just so entertaining for it. It's still everything that you love about Harry Potter. And it's a big reason why this is my favorite film in the series, and also it's my favorite book. So the subject matter, I think, is also just top notch. It's an A for me. I mean, I really do think this is so highly of this film.
I mentioned how a film can be not necessarily the most faithful adaptation of the source material, but still be a great film. I don't necessarily care for all the storytelling decisions that were made here, but this is still an excellent adaptation of Prisoner of Azkaban. I do think this is an excellent film. The stuff that Alfonso Cuarón brought to this was very much welcome. We didn't really talk about why he never returned to the series. He wanted to. I don't really know if there's a super clear explanation as to why he didn't. It was honestly probably something just like a simple scheduling conflict, Anton. This series was not going to wait around for him to become available, because I'm certain they would have had him back if they could have figured out the schedule of it all. While there is some plot incoherence in the third act, I think the visual storytelling and the performances that you see in this film more than make up for it. The characters were officially teenagers in this film, and the moodier, darker tone really reflects that well. I enjoyed this so much on the last rewatch. It's not my favorite book in the series, it's not my favorite film in the series, but I think it succeeded as a sequel because it went up a level in pretty much every department from the first two films, which I adore quite a lot, so very much. I have, minor quibbles with the plot here and there, but this is an excellent film, and it's one of the strongest standalone movies in this series. This seems to be the one that can set itself apart from some of the others in some respects, which is hard to quantify, I suppose, but this is an A- for me. And that's it for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Jake, been a pleasure having you back. Love talking some Harry Potter.
Same. Thank you. This has been excellent, and really enjoy it. And it's an honor. And I hope to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, let's have you back for maybe something non-Wizarding World related.
Ooh.
Because
That'd be interesting.
Our list of films is almost 900 long at this point, so we've got plenty to choose from.
Or we could choose another wizard-related film that's not Harry Potter. I'm sure there's something on the list.
There are several.
I'd be more than happy. Let me know.
Sorcerer's Apprentice.
The Nicolas Cage movie.
Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah, maybe something else. Anything else? Yeah, but yes, Anton, that is it for season 7.
All right, season 7. Thank you. Deuces.
Thanks for showing up. We are going to be doing our usual season recap episode, which will come out a couple of days after this one. And season 8 will begin the following week because we don't take breaks here on Why Wasn't It Better? We don't believe in doing that, at least not at this point.
But thank you, dear listeners. It's always a pleasure.
Always. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.